What up everybody, welcome back to another one. This video is actually a part 2 of the Mustang bodywork, wrapping up everything that we've been working on. But today I'm going to do something a little different. In the middle of this video, probably make another small video of it. Basically in my last video, I got a question about how I address the chips in the paint. How do I fix the chips, bodywork wise, for one, and two, I just wanted to throw out an extra tip out there, which I think I'll call this Tech Tuesdays. If I can try to do these on Tuesdays, and remember, we'll do a little tech video of things that I know or that I learned. So let me put this out there straight up right off the bat. I am not a professional painter in any freaking way, shape, or form. I don't, say that I'm the best guy out there, because I'm damn well not even close. Believe me. You know what? This is the way I do things in my shop. This is what I've watched other people do on YouTube, or I've seen my friends do this, in their shops, or there is more than one way to do everything around here. So I do things the way whatever works for me is what I do, and if it doesn't work, I find another way, which I watch YouTube or I call a homie and ask him, hey bro, what would you do with this or whatever, but most of the time I figure it out myself. A lot of the stuff I do, guys, is trial and error. You know what? It's already freaking messed up, so what's going to happen if you screw it up worse? Well, there's got to be a solution. Fix it. Right? So that's what I do. This is my home shop, and I don't do this for a big old benefit. I do this for YouTube. I do this to learn more. I do this for fun. I do this to get more knowledge. I've never worked on one of these cars. I've never worked on a 57 GMC. I've never worked on a 40 Chevy. Yeah, I worked on a 32. I've worked on many cars. But there's a lot of things in this shop that I do, and I tackle those projects because I've never worked on them before. I take every car that I bring in here as a learning process, to better myself. It's a hands-on game. You can go to school for this all day. You ain't gonna learn shit until you get out here and touch these cars. You have to invest a little bit of time, a little bit of money, a little bit of research, and you gotta invest a little bit of hands-on. You gotta understand that not all paint guns are the same. Not all sanding blocks work the same. The only way you're gonna figure this out, guys, as a DIY person, or to get better at it, is by doing it. And you're not going to be as fast as other people. I'm not as fast as other people. I see people knock out bodywork quick. You know what? That ain't me. I'm a perfectionist, and sometimes it still doesn't come out perfect. But you know what? I do what I do. So with that being said, Tech Tuesday. So what I want to talk about today, that a big question that came up on my channel, well, it's the only question, but you know what? It don't matter. The thing that matters is somebody's watching my channel. Somebody wants to see how to fix this or how I address it. Maybe there's other channels out there that didn't explain that, or, maybe their channels aren't as interesting as mine. I don't know. But either way, that's why I make these videos, just for fun, to show you guys. And if you have any questions or whatever, I'll help you the best way I can. I have my friends that help me out if I ask them. But you know what? 99.5% of the time I don't ask anybody. I just figure it out. But that's because I've been doing this a long time, enough to figure it out. There's some guys out there that just don't understand, or don't know, or they're afraid. And they don't want to screw it up, or I get it, because I was that guy. In that case, here I am, and I'm going to tell you how I would tackle this issue of fixing paint chips during bodywork. So here we go. So let's go over this car, for instance, okay? So with this paint job here, it was already painted prior, and there was no dents on it right here in this section, okay? So with that being said, in order to to paint this a different color, the first thing I would do is I would wet sand this down, or you don't even have to wet sand it, okay? You can dry sand this, and that's what I did. I dry sanded this whole panel here with 220, and I took it down until the whole thing was dull. There was no orange peel on the car, and that got me a nice smooth surface with no clear, right? Okay, that was step one. Well, you cannot spray over 220. So the next step I would go to was I went from 220 to 320, and then I went to 600. When I got to 600, you can do it wet or dry, but I chose to do wet this time. And the reason for it is it leaves you less scratching. So stuff like this doesn't mean there's a dent there. You know, it just means that you broke through to another stage past the clear coat to the paint. Of course, you have the primer where you broke through on the edges, but that's another thing. If you want really crisp edges like that, breaking them down to the primer like that is okay, because then the edging so thick, especially on door gaps. You want to feather edge these guys. You have a dent there or a chip in the paint, right? Well, there's a few ways you can tackle it. If you have a chip there, don't just sand it with your finger, because what happens? When you run your hand down this panel, all of a sudden now you're going to have a dip, a low spot, because you were sanding with your finger there, okay? So in order to fix that, if the paint's chipped and you can continue to chip it, or you're worried that it's going to continue to chip, what I do personally is I take like some 80 grit and I sand it with my finger and feather out the edge a little bit and kind of get it, you know, so the paint doesn't want to chip or peel. Some people don't even do that, but I sand it that way the Bondo or the filler has some type of grip to get to it. And sometimes you'll have a chip that has rust. So you want to get that rust out of there, because it's just going to bubble through your paint later. If there's metal, shoot a little bit of epoxy primer on it. You can get it in a can if you need to. You know, just spray a little bit of epoxy on it, a couple little coats on there, and then sand it again with 80, just enough to get a grip, a bite with the sandpaper. You have enough scratching there. Then you can take something as simple as, you know, using Bondo works. You can use Bondo, but there's finer stuff out there that is so much easier to work with, that sands easier as well. And one of them is glaze. I like to use this glaze. This one's Pro Gold. These things are like 40 bucks, 60 bucks, I don't know. But that's a two-part, so that means it's like Bondo. You squirt it on the panel. You only need a little bit. You put a little dab of the blue activator and swirl it around, and you go ahead and you can use that to skim it. You know what? You can also, if you're not using an applicator like this and you have something as small as that, you can just use a razor blade, guys. Swipe it. Always make it bigger than the actual piece itself. So if you have a chip that is like the size of a penny and you want to fill it, make sure that you fill it around like the size of like a nickel or a quarter. And the reason I say that is because you're gonna sand it. And if there's a low spot there, like if a rock hit it and then chipped it, and you don't feel that low spot, if you make it bigger just a little bit, you don't gotta make it huge, make it bigger. That way when you sand it down, it also fills that spot. So if you sand it down and the stuff just stays in the chip, there wasn't a dent there. There wasn't a low spot. We're gonna get into also helping you locate those dents with the guide coat. But with that being said, That is one option with the 2-part glaze, okay? So here's another thing. This is a lifesaver. This one here is Pro Spot from Napa. It's a 1-part. It's literally like toothpaste. You take it off, you take some off, and in fact, I found a chip on my door that I want to fix. And we're going to do that right now. So I'm going to take the 1-part, the razor blade. Okay. There's a chip right here on the door. I feather edged the chip already, and I can't really feel it, but it doesn't mean that you can't see it when the paint goes on. So yeah, I still feel it. Okay. This one is a 1-part. By what I mean by 1-part is you don't have to mix hardener in this thing. All you do is squeeze it like this, put it on your toothbrush and brush your teeth. I'm kidding. Hold on, let me get a cleaner razor blade. Alright. It doesn't matter what kind of razor. God, this one's a mess too. There we go, this will work. Doesn't matter, little razor blade, the triangular, doesn't matter. But look, you take a little bit of this glaze. I have this chip right here, okay? Hold on a minute. That's another thing. If you don't plug this right away, it starts to come out. So, see that little chip right there? You can barely see it. I already fixed one there. There's actually one fixed there, but it's not fixed all the way. There's still a little line. And there's a tiny one there. So, that's what we're going to go today. Let me actually see if I can hold you guys here. Alright. So that little guy, let me put it on this one first. So, all I do is skim it flat and just leave a little bit of meat on the bone for it. Got that little tiny pinhole. That's another thing. This is good for pinholes. If you use Bondo and you go primer, and when you wet sand it after your primer, you know, and you find these little pinholes that you missed in the Bondo, you know, don't make big old deal. All you got to do is add a little bit of this, just a little bit, over the pinholes. Let it dry. It takes a good while to dry this stuff, okay? And it sands very easy, so sand it with a very light sandpaper, like 320 or something, sometimes 220, like this one here. I still feel that. So that means that, but I feel it high. I don't feel it low. There was a very tiny little chip right there. So let me get with you guys on sanding that out, because that's where we're at. So we filled those ones. We're going to let them dry. This one here, I still feel it with my finger. Problem is, I don't know what I did with my damn sanding block. I just had it. Like literally right here. Because I was sanding right there. Wow. What the? I'm telling you, I think things in my shop have legs. I didn't go anywhere else in the shop. I didn't go anywhere else but right there. So I have absolutely no idea where that sanding block went. Here's a round one. I don't need a round one. Okay. There it is. I don't know why, but it's there. Alright, so here we go, guys. Always use blocks, guys. Durablocks are good blocks. They're not 100% the best blocks, but they are good for me. They come in all different sizes and different shapes. I'll get into that as well. So here we go. Look at this. See that little piece? I still feel it. Just block it flat. It's not gonna hurt it. You can dry sand it. You can wet sand it. It's gone. Right there. Gone. I just wet sanded this fender or this quarter with this 600 that's on this. So I'm gonna just go ahead and quickly wet sand it again just in that spot. But what I like to do, guys, is now the chip is fixed. You don't feel it anymore. It's in there. It's good to go. That's how I tackle chips, and that's what I use. So in that case, that application can be used for many different things. Like I said, this right here had a line from bubbling paint. There was paint here, or a chip or a crack. I don't know what it was. The same there. Had a weird crack in it. So I sanded the crack down. I made sure nothing peeled anymore. And then I used that one part. You can tell by the color. I skimmed it with my finger. I let it dry. I wet sanded it or dry sanded it really good and flat so you don't feel it anymore. Then I put some high build primer over it, and then I sanded it again. That's why you see that color and the primer and the actual chip that I fixed is filled. So you don't feel it anymore. It's good to go. So from that stage, guys, considering the fact that, okay, this whole panel now is now different colors, right? But it's flat. It's flat. It's ready for paint. Okay, well, that's what you use a sealer on. You can use a sealer or an epoxy. You can paint over either one of them. You just have to make sure that you read your recommendations over how it's applied and how long a wait flash time before you're able to apply paint over it, okay? You can paint over your sealer, you can paint over primers, and you can paint over epoxies. I've done all three. So it just depends on your budget and how you want to do it. Some people will argue with you and say that there's right ways and wrong ways. There is. There isn't, whatever. Fixing chips, guys, that is the way I do it, okay? Straight up. Don't finger your car. Don't give it the stinky pinky. So, like I said, don't finger it with your finger. You're going to have to sand it with your finger, okay? To get in the groove of the chip or to feather edge it, you're going to have to sand it like that or use a corner of a block. But like I said, wherever you sand, make sure that you give it a little bit more with that. So when you sand it flat and you don't feel the bump anymore of where you've put the filler and it's in the hole there or it stays within the dent that was there, then we're good. If you suspect there's a dent there, guys, don't use that. Use the 2-part glaze because that stuff doesn't like big dents or big stuff. Little chips, little finishing stuff like that is what I use that for. I don't use it for bigger dents and dings, guys. I really don't. If it's something very minimal, I skim it with my finger and I wet sand it down. I do not use that for bigger stuff or dents, okay? That stuff will sand right off and you're gonna have a dent still and you're gonna have to do it again. So with that being said, for Tech Tuesday, that is what I do for chips, guys. If you have any more questions, hit me up. Sometimes I don't see these comments, guys. I don't. So in my email there, hit me up on the email. I'll try to keep up with the comments for this specific video and others. If you have other questions, hit me up. I'll do my best to help you through this. And we'll get this stuff done together. Cool? All right, guys. Have a good one. Peace.